Well, and since I know you guys record it, I'll just reintroduce myself in case other people decide to watch this. I'm Jillian Wilson-Martin. I'm the Director of Sustainability for the town of Natick. And today I'm going to be talking to this group with respect to my role and what I've learned as part of the Charles River Dam Advisory Committee. And I'm joined by Martin Kessel, who I'll let introduce himself.
And I'm also on the dam committee,
Damn committee.
Jillian's come up with that alliteration and we use it all the time. Yes, I'm also on as a neighbor, a butter, also open space, several different roles. And I guess that's it. I do live on the Charles River, just downstream. So when people start talking about the state of the river downstream, I can be very critical as to whether they're doing it accurately or not. And open space committee, which is, we just talked about the situation at our last meeting. And anyhow, we'll see what evolves.
Great.
Great. So it's okay if I share my screen?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just wanted to ask first.
Okay. Oh, it's open already. I thought I had to make you co-host. It was already open. Okay.
I already have the power. So thanks everyone for your interest in this. And I really appreciate you all for understanding and appreciating that it's really a very complex issue, which is why the town has this advisory committee. These are the expectations that we have in our advisory committee meetings. And I just thought I'd put them here because I feel like that's always like the expectations of this group. And I want to thank you for being that kind of group. I apologize, I'll probably talk a little fast. I'm going to try not to. I've tried to provide an update with information about what would happen if we repaired or removed the dam. And then I plan to talk through what I've learned. And Martin is, of course, welcome to jump in, but like the facts that we've heard or the information that we've gathered as a committee on a few key points that we identified early on as things that we cared about exploring. But the background goes back even further than 1934, which is that there have been dams on the Charles River in Natick for hundreds of years, not always in the same place and often now for different reasons. And the current dam that we are talking about was built in 1934. It was built as part of a Great Depression work project for recreational use. And there's little zigzag lines there because a lot of time passed between 1934 and 2011, and in those, almost century, less than that, the dam became out of compliance with state regulations, which changed and evolved over the course of the dam's life too. As we all got smarter, we learned more as a society about like what the right way to take care of dams were. And so since 2011, the dam has been out of compliance with rules regarding trees on dams and other needs for maintenance. And then in 2019, the town, through Bill McDowell, our town engineer, he's upstairs, or usually he's on vacation, but that's why I'm pointing up. He started a process of repairing the dam to get the dam in compliance. And at that point, we had a public meeting, and there was a lot of disappointment and the idea of having to remove all of the trees from the dam, and which I'll kind of point out a little bit more in a minute. And that kind of triggered this new process that's been this feels like a very long journey all through COVID that we've been on to explore what's an alternative to repairing the dam. And so to do that, the interim town administrator at the time, Bob Rooney, he felt that we needed to have an advisory committee that really looked into all of the issues. And he appointed, it's a now 19-member body. I think it started as 20 committee. We were formed not this March, but last March. We've been reviewing and discussing all these issues. Our goal is to reach 75% agreement among the committee on our recommendation. If we don't reach 75% agreement, we'll still provide a recommendation, and it'll just show how it netted out in terms of folks on the committee, what they recommended. And you can see all the different perspectives that are included. We often have called ourselves like an all-star committee because we have representatives from all these different groups. And it's really been a pleasure working with everyone on this committee because I feel like they've been so respectful and thoughtful and really trying to dive deep into the issues and also respond to public feedback. So what will happen after the advisory committee makes a recommendation, which is scheduled to happen at the end of July. So just as a heads up, we have a meeting next Tuesday, July 19th. And that's our first meeting where we're no longer like taking new information in, we're deliberating and we're starting to form our recommendation. And by July 26th, the week after, that's when we're supposed to really finalize our recommendation, and then we'll prepare a report and submit it to the select board. So after us, the recommendation goes to the select board. They could ignore our recommendation. They could, they're going to be the ones who choose a path forward and work with the town administrator to develop a plan for funding. And then if funding is needed from the town budget, it would go to town meeting for that appropriation. And that's actually necessary for either option, because the repair option, while it was originally funded, it now costs a lot more than what was originally anticipated. So funding would need to be appropriated either way. So we've done a lot of meetings. As I mentioned, we've been working on this for a year. We did a lot of community engagement up front. In January, all of our meetings are open to the public. They're recorded. Everything is available at natickma.gov/CRDAM. And as part of that, we've also done some cool extra community engagement with middle schoolers. For example, we've had surveys. We've had over 900 residents take our surveys. We've been developing FAQs, which we'll be publishing a new one this week. And we've been meeting with a lot of experts on a lot of different topics. And I actually haven't even updated this list because this is back from the spring, but we've met with experts on safety and flooding, culture, history, ecology, community use and recreation. And then we've also been talking to other towns throughout this, our neighbors who are on the Charles, and also visiting other communities that have either repaired or repaired dams or restored rivers in their communities. So I'm going to walk you through like the most current understanding of the options that are available, and then go through the information we've learned regarding like essentially the pros and cons of each, but more in like an impact way. And we'll start here. So first, I just wanted to like level set with everyone. I feel like this is always very helpful to show what we're talking about. So are you able to see my cursor? Okay, good. So I guess it doesn't even matter because everything's so well labeled. But the spillway is what most people actually think of as a dam, but it's a part of the dam. The dam includes the spillway, which is the waterfall that you think of, and then also this earthen berm, which is what's actually really doing the job of holding the water back. And the earthen berm, the earthen dam, is the structure that we are talking about when we talk about where the trees would be removed. And there's about 60, maybe it's 64, I forget, there's 60 something trees on this earthen dam. And upstream of the dam is where the impoundment is. That's like that pond that's behind the dam. Water is basically like captured in the dam as almost like in a bathtub, but it's a run of the river dam. So any water that's coming into the impoundment that's above that bathtub is going out. And so there's no flood protection or flood control provided by this dam. And then downstream of the dam is below the waterfall. And so that's how you think of the dam. Here's a picture of the impoundment area looking downstream. And the dam is considered a high hazard dam because of the amount of water that it holds back and its potential to cause damage downstream. High hazard dams, by definition of the state, are dams that if they were to fail, could cause the loss of life and significant property damage. So the repair option that we originally discussed in 2019 required the removal of all of the trees on the earthen dam. There's recently been some question about, is it really all of the trees? This has actually been a question kind of in different iterations throughout this entire process. The Office of Dam Safety has a policy that's actually called No Trees on Dams, which feels like it should maybe be like a bumper sticker, right? It's like so clear, no trees on dams. And the town, in response to public feedback and guidance from the advisory committee, we actually commissioned the same engineers who did this design for us for repair to do 2 additional designs to see if there was a way that we could keep the trees on the dam. And they came up with some ideas. One include doing sheet pilings in the front of the dam to like reinforce it there. The other included backfilling this like wetland area, which has like a lot of other things required if you do that. And the Office of Dam Safety was presented with those, those designs. And they said, no, our policy is no trees on dams. That means no trees on dams, like end of story. And another questions that has come up recently is, are the trees on the southern side of this property, would they all be subject to the permanent tree removal that would be required by the Office of Dam Safety? And right now, the town's expectation is yes, they would. There's been some discussions about like property lines and is this piece of property really part of the dam? And the way that the Office of Dam Safety makes that determination is based on topography and the relation to the impoundment. So property lines and deeds are not what they consider when they are thinking about that. And we wouldn't know for sure about every single tree until the permit process was to occur. So we can't get like a final answer on exactly if any of these trees on the southern side, when I say southern side, I mean this section, I think you said you can see my cursor, that's close to there's a historic home over there, like on the left side of my screen. But the assumption is that all of the trees must go, and maybe there's a chance if you could remain, but maybe not, and likely not. So if we were to repair the dam and remove the trees along Pleasant Street that are on the other side of that wetland area there, those could stay. But all of the other trees would be required to be removed permanently, and we couldn't replant them. We would have to also reinforce the edge of the shoreline to help prevent erosion and kind of secure the earthen berm. If we were to remove the spillway and restore the river, what would happen is the impoundment would change to flow like a river. That means that there would no longer be the large pond. We wouldn't have that bathtub holding water, kind of like capturing water and creating this bathtub behind the spillway, because there would be no more spillway. The earthen berm would remain, the trees would remain, the waterfall would be removed, and the river would carve a new natural path. The edges of the river would be revegetated. In visiting sites where dams were removed, we saw that it becomes revegetated relatively quickly, is our understanding. That can happen within weeks and months. I have like a little table in the back if you have more questions about that. And there's these deposits of seeds that are in the sediment that are just like waiting to blossom, that are, if they were exposed to air instead of constantly water, they would quickly revegetate. In terms of like the extent of the changes to the river, so this is from a presentation that we just received on June 27th from Stantec. Stantec worked through the Division of Ecological Restoration, completed a preliminary spillway design removal study. I'm going to say it wrong, but what they found is that the extent that the dam impacts the river is, you can kind of think of it in 2 parts. So there's the impoundment, which is actually more than just that pond. The pond area on this right-hand side, you see where that like dash yellow line is? To the right of it, the dash yellow line is where that red pedestrian bridge is over the Charles. And then the very end on the right side, that's where the dam is. And you can see that that area is like fatter than the rest of the river moving towards Farm Road. That's what they're calling the southern impoundment in their research. And that's where we'll see most of the changes. The river would change the most because that's where it's really very much like almost like a quiet pond. And that's where the changes would be the most, I don't want to say extreme, but the most significant. And then upstream of that pedestrian bridge, there would be changes to the river still, but they would be less significant. And this is a pretty like intense chart, but this is what Stantec shared. And I want you to first, I'm going to try to orient you to this chart. So basically the flow is from right to left. So think about the right-hand side. You can see there's a note down here where it says approximate location of the Farm Road Bridge. That was the end of the northern impoundment section that was shown on this slide. So see this like gray arrow over there. So that's like about here. And then over here on the left-hand side, you can see where this area is where the dam is. And then downstream of this black line is downstream of the dam. And this blue line is where the water level is currently. And the dashed blue line is where they expect the water level would be if the dam was to be removed. And then this black line with these little X's that's dashed, that is essentially like the bottom of the river, the river topography. And so what you can see is that the further upstream of the dam, the further you get into like Dover and Sherburne, the depth levels don't change as much. And even all the way to the pedestrian bridge, they're pretty similar. But then once you're approaching the dam and the waterfall, the river topography changes pretty significantly. And that bathtub effect that I was telling you about, you can really see it very prominently there. So the river depth would change pretty dramatically near the dam, and it would function more like a river instead of a pond. And Stantec shared that there might be some kind of natural riffles or rapids there. There's an opportunity for the town to, in a design, to design a channel that could be deeper, but this is what would naturally they expect would happen. And you can see that downstream of the dam, there would be no change in the river depth. It would be the same as what it is currently. So, people ask, what will the river look like if the spillway is removed? And this picture actually, Martin, I think it's from your backyard. It's from the Boston Vegetarian Society picture.
Oh my God! Yeah, we were just talking about that. We just had one 2 days ago for the latest.
Yeah, I thought about going. It was like a crazy weekend.
Yeah, Bev should be listening. She'll be happy to see that picture.
Yeah, I cited it on the bottom. Okay. So there's been a lot of question about like, well, what will the river look like if the spillway is removed? And what we've been told over and over again by people who've done a lot of dam removals is that the river will look like how the river looks upstream and downstream. There will be a change in the river because it'll act like a river and not a pond. And in some parts of rivers, there are these like rapids or areas where it's slightly shallow, but it won't. I feel like there's been a term of art used recently in the community where people have said that, oh, it would turn into a muddy creek. I don't feel like that's an accurate or fair way of describing what would happen. These are pictures upstream and downstream. This is the Cheney Bridge at Elm Bank. You can see someone kayaking. This is, like I said, at Martin's house, who lives downstream of the river. And then this on the bottom left, this is upstream of the river at Peters Reservation. And nowhere on the Charles in this area do I think it looks like a muddy creek. So,
Jillian, excuse me, could you go back to the slide with the funky one more back?
Yes.
So I was looking at the number of feet that that the bottom of the river drops. Mm-hmm. And it looks like it goes from like 106 feet to 100 feet at the bottom. So
which line are you talking about?
The dash line, mm-hmm. which you said was the bottom of the river?
Yeah, the
It
black.
looks like a pretty substantial drop from right, yeah, and that blue's, yeah, there.
Yeah, no, it is. That is a
Yeah.
substantial drop, which is why that's probably where the dam was built in the first place, because of that kind of drop, providing that energy for and the ability to create that bathtub there.
Yeah. So I was just trying to see how much the you said that the dashed blue line, that's what it would be. So instead of the, yeah, that's where it is now, around 110 or higher. And then it would go down to that there. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's a big change.
Yes.
Because there's this impediment
Yes.
that's causing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, change is
But the black dash line, you said that's where it is now?
no, the black dash line.
No, the light gray, whatever, the little dashes up higher? That one?
This one?
Yeah.
No, this is, I would hesitate to like ask me to describe that. But my understanding is the lines that we should be looking at the most are is this like blue line?
That blue, okay, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
thank you. That
Yeah.
blue line, and then it would go to the blue dash line. Okay.
Right. And again,
Got
this
it.
is, yes. And this is an estimate. So,
Yeah.
and there's also, and this is if it was to be removed, if the spillway was to be removed, and then this was to be kind of let to take its own course. And there are opportunities to influence that through how the town, if we were to do this project, design a channel for the river and things like that. But this is the best guess. The truth is, every dam removal is different. And Mother Nature will do what Mother Nature does. And we don't always know exactly what that will be. So there's some uncertainty at the end of the day. Thank
you.
Welcome. So, and thanks for that question. I'm going to try to be quick through these, but these are some of the things that we've learned. So, those are the two scenarios of what could happen. I think at a high level, and then the things that we've been considering beyond that are the financial implications, the cultural implications, what experts are saying on the ecological benefits or pros and cons of either option, and then also aesthetics is really important. So on the cost side, there's two things that we learned that I think are interesting. So the town is responsible for 100% of costs in the event of a dam failure. So by owning a dam, we are liable for any damages that it causes. And if we were to repair the dam, we would continue to have that like potential liability. And I wrote 100% plus because right now we're out of compliance, and we've been told we're out of compliance with taking care of this dam for years now. So there's a potential that we could be responsible for even more if we didn't take action. And this is an inundation map that shows what would happen, or what's estimated would happen if the dam was to fail. And you can see there's a blue and pink area, and the pink area is what would happen if the dam was to fail on a sunny day, and the blue is what would happen if it was to fail in a rain event and bad weather. And something to remember is that a dam failure isn't just about like the dam, like all that water leaving the dam. It would often be like all that water plus anything it picks up along the way. So that is part of the reason it's a high hazard dam. We also learned that the cost difference between dam repair and spillway removal or river restoration is pretty great in the sense that there's a big difference between the two. Repairing the dam is estimated to cost about $1 million more than restoring the river, and that does not include any operation and maintenance costs. So we've talked to GZA about operation and maintenance, and they estimate that it would be about $830,000 just for 30 years if we were to maintain the dam and the spillway properly. There's also more funding available for river restoration. There's some grants available for dam repair, but there is a lot of grants available for river restoration, and those grants are often actually larger and can cover up to even 100% of the costs to restore the river. Culture and history. Something that has been asked a lot is like, is this dam historic? Does the Historic District Commission have a say in it? And yes, there have been dams on this river for hundreds of years. They've been different dams. You can see here an old map of Natick. Then on the where it shows like dams on the river, then on the upper right, this is the dam that was there before the current dam. This is a picture that someone shared on Facebook recently. It was a postcard, I think from 1905. And there was actually, it was a wooden dam that was two parts with an island in the middle. So isn't that like interesting to me, like that island that we think of as the island in South Natick on the river is not actually the same island as it used to be. And there used to be an island connecting two dams that went across the river. And then on the bottom right, you can see a picture in 1934 when the current dam was constructed, and you can even see some little baby trees that are planted on the other side of the river, which I think is funny. But what we've learned is that we have a member of the Historic District Commission on our committee, and she shared that the dam is not in their jurisdiction. We also had presentations from two of our Indigenous representatives on the committee, and they both asked the committee to remove the dam and to honor the river. And they've shared that their ancestors actively petitioned against dams on the Charles River, specifically the Watertown Dam, which was the first dam to really impact fish passage. And they shared that their ancestors were ignored. And then from an ecological impact, what we learned was that dams are really not good for rivers. These are slides that were shared by Nick Wildman and Allison Roy. Dr. Allison Roy. Nick Wildman is a senior lead at the Division of Ecological Restoration. And his slide was on the left, but basically dams, it's not just about fish passage. I think that maybe oversimplifies it. It's not, removing the dam and restoring the river wouldn't just be about helping fish. So it's not like a fish versus human question. What happens when there's a dam is, yes, it blocks fish passage, but it also causes warmer temperatures in the impoundment area that not only make it harder for fish, but they make it hard for aquatic vegetation and macro invertebrates and bugs and things that make for a healthy river ecosystem to function well, and the water quality is degraded, and then it traps the sediment, which is then deprived from the downstream area of the dam. Dams also, because of this warmer temperature and lower dissolved oxygen levels, they contribute to more algae blooms, and there's more and more toxic algae blooms on the river and lakes, as a lot of you know lately. And we received a presentation from Dr. Allison Roy, who is with USGS, UMass, and like several other agencies, where she's been doing a longitudinal study over the years showing the impacts of dams, but also what happens when dams are removed. And what she's found is that there's more macroinvertebrates in impoundments after dams are removed, and that dissolved oxygen levels increase when dams are removed. And, you know, I'm not showing it here, but in her presentation to us, I believe in October, she also showed how dissolved oxygen levels and temperatures were different in the impoundments than they were upstream and downstream of the dam. We also know that our dam, my little triangle moved on me, but we're actually this like orange circle that looks like it's in Framingham, where you see those two orange circles there. Our dam is rated to be in the 90th percentile on a tool that the Division of Ecological Restoration has, estimating the restoration potential and the benefits for removing the dam. And then it's also so another question we've gotten is, you know, what's the point of removing our dam if there's still dams on the Charles River? And something we learned, we received a letter from the Charles River Watershed Association in January. And what's interesting is our dam is a very similar vintage to a lot of dams on the river, and a lot of communities and dam owners are asking the same questions as us. And there's a dam, the Sanford Mill Dam, which is downstream of ours, and that dam is in poor condition. It might even be in worse condition. It's a privately owned dam, and there's interest in removing that dam. And then there's a lot of advocacy for other dams being removed or increasing fish passage along the river. So it's potentially something that could happen across the watershed. Also, our dam is a barrier between cold water fisheries, and removing it would reconnect two cold water fisheries to a number of tributaries, and then also the main stem of the river. And the last point in this section is that we have heard from a number of environmental groups that support river restoration. Here's a list of those, including the Broadmoor Wildlife Sanctuary, which is, I think, the largest property owner downstream of the river, or sorry, upstream of the river. And then on the aesthetic side, we did a survey in December and January where we learned what people really cherish about this area, and then also things that they feel like could be improved. We all recognize and acknowledge this is like a really beautiful area. There's something special about it, but there's things that we would like to see be different. Like we would like it to be more accessible, safer for families with young children. This is the only place in Natick where you can actually access the river, and that accessibility is limited at the moment. So we did work with a landscape architecture firm, Halverson, to design some very preliminary concepts. These are not like necessarily what would happen, but to show what could be possible if the dam was either repaired or removed. And you can see those here. If whichever decision the select board and the town ultimately makes, there would be a different process for actually designing what the park areas surrounding the dam would be. That's not what our committee's focused on, but I believe our committee will make a recommendation that whichever way the town goes, that they appropriate money to also improve the parks and not neglect that as part of this project. So I've been talking for a while. This is our work ahead. Right now we're in this community consultation period, and then we have our next meeting next Tuesday, followed by another meeting a week from then, and then we'll be submitting our recommendation to the select board. And Martin, I hope I did us our work justice. Is there anything you would add?
Oh my God, yes, I think you did a great job. There's a lot of other things that can be added, but I think we'll see how the questions go. And I was talking to Jillian before this, and I couldn't imagine how to condense. We've had 11 meetings going from 2 to 3 hours, so about 30 hours of meetings, and trying to condense that into all that information into 1 hour is a challenge, but actually a half hour, because now we have question and answers. But yeah, anything else people have questions on, I will certainly probably have things to add on a number of subjects, so maybe we'll see how that goes.
Absolutely fantastic presentation. One just logistical note, is that presentation something that you guys can share with us, give us a copy of, so we can email it out to people or whatever? There was so much material that you presented that some of the slides you went through a little bit quickly. I'd like to.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. No. It's just it's worth revisiting on our own if we have a copy of it.
This came out even denser than usual, because each one of our 11 meetings has had a slide deck much longer than that, because we have 2 to 3 hour meetings.
Yeah.
And Jillian has done an incredible job of picking the key ones that can show us the whole picture. So yeah, it's dense. The material is dense. But I think it's important that people get information, because a lot of the opinions people are coming up with is based on like slogans, and there's just so much information that people should get before you come up with a real conclusion.
Yeah. So since the work of the committee so far has been, as you say, information gathering and analysis, and not deliberative. Does that mean that right now you wouldn't even hazard a guess or would not want to say where you think you might be on this 75% metric of off the record? No.
Off the record, recorded.
Yeah, right.
No, I wouldn't want to hazard a guess.
Yeah.
But I think Martin's point is so good about, right now, I feel like there, as you mentioned early on, there is a group who is really interested in repairing the dam, and a lot of the people who are leading that group live right near the dam. And I think it's very hard to contemplate change in that area, right? And because there's been a dam there for almost 100 years, it feels like it's been there forever, right? And so that's difficult to imagine something different. And I really have a lot of empathy for these residents, and I feel like it's very hard to talk about this without talking about all of the issues. And I've personally just been a little disappointed about some of the conversation happening right now, where there's, a lot of just not a complete picture being shared. And that's why I'm here today.
Yeah. Carrie, you've got your hand up. You got a question? Oh, you got to come off mute. Yeah. There you go.
Great presentation once again. About a third of the way through the presentation, I heard you talked about the spillway, and I heard the word "if" in that sentence. If it's removed, if the dam is restored, is it irrespective of what happens? Is the spillway going to be removed, or could it be maybe part of it breached so that it would increase the flow of the river and kind of reduce the level of the pond behind it? Or is the spillway, is it irrespective of what happens? Is it history?
No, so if the dam is repaired, the spillway would remain, the waterfall would remain.
Okay.
And if the dam is repaired, we had this information at our June 14th meeting, I believe, where the town had talked to, there's a law around fish passage, and I don't think it's fully clear to us, like everything we would need to do to provide fish passage. The fish ladder that's there is for a different kind of species that doesn't live in the Charles River. It's one of those things where they were trying their best in 1934, but now that we know better, we can do better, kind of thing. And fish ladders also, what we learned from our ecological meeting in October is that fish ladders are great to have, but they don't actually allow very much fish passage anyway. But we might have to build a new fish ladder if we were to repair the dam because of this law. But we don't know all the implications of that. And we have an estimate on cost for essentially an aluminum fish ladder that would be added to the dam if we were to do that. Anyway, it can get very complicated very quickly.
Sure. I think just people rush to judgment when they hear about removing the dam. They think, oh my God, the spillways, because it's such an aesthetic, a place, and so many wedding pictures, et cetera, taken there, and that's what people think of as the dam. And they just rush to judgment that, oh my God, that's going to be gone, and how could they do this? And so I think the spillway, if it can be preserved, would be satisfy most people's.
Well, it can't be preserved if the dam is to be removed. The spillway, yeah.
Any water to go over it, basically.
Yeah. There would be no more waterfall, or no more artificial waterfall. There could be like rapids or a riffle with like a more natural, like water going over rocks thing. But it's like really important. The spillway would be gone if there was no more dam.
Mm-hmm. But if the dam is restored, trees removed and buffered up somehow to block the water, the spillway would remain, or just completely? Right,
it would, but then we would lose the ecological benefits of river restoration. The river would not be restored.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that maybe a really quick thumbnail way to think of it is you can have the trees or you can have the spillway, but you can't continue to have both.
Yeah.
I had a process question. One of your slides mentioned that so you'll make a recommendation to the select board, and then the select board will come to the town for funding. And both options require funding. What if town meeting doesn't approve that? Is that kind of a de facto keeping the dam but out of compliance? Is the, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I would imagine that if town meeting, so you could play it out, right? So like one scenario is that the committee recommends to repair it. The select board follows that, and then town meeting is asked to appropriate funding to do that. Town meeting could just say, yes, here's the money, or they could say, hey, I have a new motion and I'm going to say that we should remove it. And here's why. And then there's a vote, right? So I would be, it's, you know, town meeting can do what town meeting wishes, but I would be hard pressed to believe that town meeting would actually neglect to take action in one way or the other. I don't think that would happen, because the risk is becoming larger to the town to do nothing. I don't know if you would add anything, Martin.
Yeah, so it's interesting that in 2019 spring annual town meeting, this is actually the first paper in my file, which is growing. Town meeting approved $1.2 million to repair the dam. Before there was a controversy, before we knew the trees had to come down, before that we knew that there was another option of removing the dam, they approved that. So that really still goes, but the 1.2 million isn't enough because we started to do all the engineering studies. So we have a standstill. Really, I think town meeting has to either appropriate the rest or else has to redo the appropriation for dam removal, which they haven't authorized yet. And if town meeting can't agree, and the town meeting disagrees with selectmen, we got a problem. We got to do something. I mean,
Right.
I think everybody agrees we have to do something. People
Yeah,
don't
I think
agree
the
as well.
absolute worst scenario would be, and given all the work the committee has done, I really hope that town meeting doesn't do this, but sometimes when town meeting finds something, in my opinion, at least, when town meeting finds something confusing, sometimes they refer it back for further study. And God help us if they do that, because I don't know what more we could study, but
We've got 3
you
years.
guys have done a fantastic job with your study, and I can't imagine more, but I just, sometimes I think town meeting kind of throws up its hands and says, I don't get this, send it back.
Well, but beyond that, the faction that would want it to stay as it is, that would be in their self-interest to have that happen, I guess is right. That's kind of what I'm worried about a little bit, but I know that's way beyond or it's outside the scope of the committee and, Jillian and Martin and so forth.
I would just say that my hope is that we have 19 members on this committee, and we have members from the finance committee, the planning board, the recreation commission, open space, town meeting members. I'm hopeful that whatever recommendation the committee makes, that the members of the committee will support that recommendation at town meeting, and that we have people who are well respected in town, and that can be advocates for and trusted individuals in terms of like putting their recommendation forward.
Yeah.
I hope.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I hope so too. Sometimes it's my sense that town meeting kind of gets overwhelmed and just says, oh, let's throw this one back for a while. And given how much work you guys have done, I truly hope that does not happen.
Yeah, I see several people with their hands up. Brinley, I think you're next.
Hi, Jillian. Thank you guys so much work. It's truly thorough and incredible. My questions, I have 3. The first one is, the slides went a little quick, and so I didn't really notice if there were numbers attached. I'm going to give all my questions at once, if that's okay. If there are numbers attached to potential liability. I do think that is sometimes an effective way of helping people understand both sides. So I'm wondering if there have been any projections of numbers attached to potential liabilities for what the town could monetarily have at stake. The second is, once there is a decision, is there within your committee, is there any discussion or conversation thus far about educating the rest of the community and the townsfolk towards the decision, or has that then become a new committee? How does the education part work? And third, I remember very distinctly what happened when we were going through pay as you throw. And even though we had made extensive studying and recommendations and what have you, we had a very large contingent of people that did robocalling and worked very hard to stop pay as you throw. And as we see that has already started happening with the Save Our Dam people, is there committee thoughts for, I imagine there'll be both sides. I imagine if the vote is to repair, that there will also be the other side. And is there any thoughts to how to manage dissension among the ranks after the decision?
I can start with your first question on numbers attached to liability. So the town does not, we don't have like an actuarial report about our liability. And my understanding is that it's, and I don't want to speak out of order, I'm not sure. I'm sorry, one of the pictures is really funny right now. I'm not sure if the town's insurance, I don't believe the town's insurance actually covers the liability that we would have if something was to happen. I could be wrong about that, but my understanding is like the town would be on the hook for any damages, and that's not like covered by our insurance policy. On the slide that I had about it, it's really just a very like guess at the liability. We took an intern and I actually, using the assessor's database, we just looked at the property values associated with the properties in the inundation zone if the dam was to fail. In total, those are valued at $576 million. That's not to say that's what the cost would be, but in some, you could potentially say that's like a worst case scenario. That doesn't account for if someone was to die or anything like that. I'm not suggesting that that would happen any time in the immediate future. I don't think the dam is like in failure condition, but that is essentially a way of guessing at the liability. And then Martin, I don't know if you want to address the other two questions.
I don't remember them, but let me just add to that one, and then somebody can refresh me on the others. In terms of the and our house is in the normal flood zone, much less the disaster flood zone. But clearly, the town wants to fix the dam that's now in danger, right? It's in a dangerous condition. But people have asked, pointed out, there's still what Bill McDowell, the town engineer, says there's a probability greater than zero that even if the dam is repaired, there could be a catastrophe. Well, personally, I'm not impressed by a probability greater than zero, which is kind of like an asteroid hitting my house tomorrow. I haven't heard what is the probability, so I really don't know what the danger is. I think that if the dam's repaired, the danger is very, very, very minimal. Until somebody tells me what the chances are, I'm not really going to consider it. But anyway, that's my personal opinion. What was the other question?
So before you move on to the other two, can I ask a follow-up real quick about that? So if our town insurance doesn't have any inclusivity for dam failure and damage, with what the state requires, will we have to change our insurance, and will there be costs attributed to changing the insurance? Is there,
you can't,
what happens with that part of it?
I don't believe you can actually get insurance if you own a dam. You can't get insurance to cover that potential risk, is like my understanding. Again, I'm not speaking for the town when I say that. I'm speaking that as someone who's like been researching this as part of the committee. So that's not the official town answer. Someone else would have to provide that, like the town administrator's office. But that's what I've heard from other dam owners.
Thank you. So Martin, my other two questions were revolved around communication to the town. Once there is a recommendation, is there already thought process around communicating so that we don't have miscommunication from other groups? is there a communication already thought process?
No, I don't think it's been worked out, but that's an excellent idea. Even now, you'd think, I really honestly, I've been in a lot of committees and followed a lot more, but I don't think there's been anything more transparent than this. Every meeting is recorded and it's online on a single, easy to find website. Every agenda, every minute, all the PowerPoint presentations from every one of those 11 meetings is really easy to get to. But of course, people aren't all going to go to that because, as I said, it's 30 hours of meetings, which can get a little tiring. So, the question is how to encourage people to get the information. I think maybe doing programs like this that condense it down to 1 hour into a manageable chunk. I think that might be a good idea. We can get together some other things like this. A one-page mailing to everybody maybe might be useful.
Yeah, I think the real key though is that as you move from investigation or to recommendation, that I think I agree with everybody. The work you guys have done so far has been exhaustive and terrific, but presumably once you've made a recommendation, the important message is why was that the recommendation, in providing a super summarized view.
Yeah,
So
I mean, even if the recommendation is not what I decided,
whatever it is,
which I haven't decided yet actually, but even if I don't agree with the recommendation, I totally will understand. I mean, I understand the basis and the reasons for it, because there's definitely two sides that are valid. I mean, I have to say that both sides have
sure.
very good arguments and good reasons, and nobody's on the committee who votes one way or the other is doing it in bad faith or for selfish reasons. But the people on the committee have all the information, and I really hope people in the community can get a lot of that information too.
Yeah, it's, I apologize, I'm speaking out of turn because I know Cindy and Bev both have their hands up, but when you talked about getting to a 75% agreement on the committee, it reminded me, and maybe Sarah can speak to this in a minute or two, but of the notion that potentially the committee might want to have a majority and opinion and a dissenting opinion, just so that we can, see that all options were considered. But Cindy, you've been very patient. What would you like to say? Just gonna come off mute. There you go.
Bells are ringing. My question is, if I've seen the signs around to save the dam, and it occurred to me that Jillian, your presentation is it's neutral, and it's 1 hour, and if that group is organized, that could the committee approach that group and say, we'd love to have you hear where we are now, and do a Zoom just like this? I don't know, just so they have like the real information from the committee.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea to do this 1 hour presentation. I'll share that the folks that I understand are leading the Save the Dam group, they've attended most of our meetings, and they're choosing to represent it that way.
Okay.
I actually spoke to one of the members of it, because one thing that personally bothers me about the petition that they have right now is that it says it's a question of repairing the dam or removing a few trees. And I don't feel like that is a very fair statement. One of my children actually recently asked me what few meant, and I said 3, and this was before this came up. And I don't think 60 trees, or even say it was 45, if there was to be some amount of trees that could be saved. That's not a few trees, and it's bigger than trees. I know there is a simple way of saying it's about the trees or the waterfall. I think that the health of the river is actually what we should be thinking about the most, personally, and that's different than even the trees. But yeah, so I shared that I was disappointed about that when that petition had very few signatures, and I said I would respect this petition a lot more if it was more transparent about the actual issue, and it hasn't been changed. So
Thanks.
Bev, did you want to have a question? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm totally in line with what Jillian just said. Even though I love the dam, I go there frequently. It's a half a mile from our house.
And you use it as your background.
I'm sorry?
And you use it as your background.
Yes, we
And
can
I use
see
it as
that.
my background.
Yeah.
You had like a chair in front of it for a second. That was what was making me laugh earlier.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said, Jillian.
Oh, like I think you had stepped away and it was just like your chair or something like
All
that
right.
there. So it was a little
Right.
funny. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
I
you.
didn't even realize that was there. But I totally agree that I go with the environmental impact. And also the financial it can be a big difference, but the main difference for me is to, especially in this time of such climate catastrophe, anything to benefit the environment is what I would go for. But I did hear a lot of comments when I didn't attend all the meetings, but I attended some of them from especially upstream abutters and one resident of our street, upstream abutters. I just wanted to have their views presented so people get a full picture. I know there was maybe Martin and Jillian can fill this in, but there was concern by upstream abutters that their backyards were going to turn into wetlands, that they don't have ready access to the river anymore, that they lose their beautiful views. I don't know if there's more than that. And one downstream abutter on our street is quite vehement, even though every expert has said the opposite, that if the dam were removed, parts of our street would flood that weren't flooded before. And he bases this on the what a neighbor who preceded him, and he's been here for decades and decades, a neighbor who preceded him said that the house at the end of the street that exists now couldn't have been there pre-dam because it would have been in a flood, it would have been in a wetland, it would have been flood zone. So can either of you add any more? I just wanted to present the other side of that, just to be fair.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I would say that, yes, I've talked with the downstream abutter that you're mentioning, and it's unfortunate because that keeps coming up and it's not accurate from everything we've heard from the experts, right? The dam was not built for flood control purposes. It doesn't serve as a flood control. There is a gate in the dam that it's broken right now. So if you were to open it, you could never close it again. It'd be the last time you could use it. But that could potentially be used in some form like that, but it would provide such minimal flood protection. The way that they measure flood protection in these kinds of situations is like hours of time that you would have to prevent flooding. It would be less than an hour. So it's not a flood control structure. And that's kind of end of story for me on that one. And then on the upstream, yes, there would be a change to the river. It's like those abutters, I completely appreciate their concerns. They live on the river. The property deeds typically own to the center line of the river. So if the river was to change, their property lines would, their property would still go to the center line of the river, right? So they would still have riverfront property. The area along the river, essentially the way I interpret it is that I would basically shift their lawns in the sense that where it's wetland now would now be closer to the river, and further towards their house would be drier than it is now. And I spent time on the Charles this weekend at the trustees' property. I do stand-up paddleboarding, and I went near that trestle, the old trestle bridge in Needham, I think is where it is. And I was struck by how beautiful it was. The water was really shallow there, but it was just, I saw a heron, I saw a swan with their, cygnets, I saw a river otter, I saw all sorts of wildlife, and it was a place where there were houses, and I thought, man, I wish I lived here. So personally, I feel like the aesthetics of the river are beautiful in either scenario. But it's a change that's very hard, and I completely appreciate that.
I can just,
Um,
one of our field trips that our committee went on was to Worcester and Paxton, and the Worcester was a reservoir. I don't remember the name exactly. You may tell me. But there was a reservoir in Worcester that's formed by a dam, obviously. The reason this is an example of a restored dam, and the reason they restored it rather than removed it is because there are lots of dozens and dozens of abutters that have reservoir front property with boating and all that, and had a huge recreational value. And I was there with the upstream abutter, and he said, "This is kind of like your place, isn't it?" And it is. The only difference is I think there were a lot more people in that Worcester location than there are here, so it made more of an impact. And I'm not sure what the benefit would have been ecologically in removing the dam there. It may not have been as much of a case for removal as it was here either.
So I just want to jump in for 1 second of, kind of to concur with what Jillian said. There are beautiful places along the Charles River that don't involve impoundments. People go to walk at Elm Bank all the time, and you walk along the river trails and it's beautiful. So, it's not going to be a pond, but it would be beautiful. And I guess the other comment is in regard to the house at the end of your road, Martin, and whether it could have been built before. I'm totally hypothesizing here because I haven't looked at the maps and the data, but back in the day, people were not particularly concerned about filling in wetlands if they needed to for construction. So it strikes me as possible that the reason that house might have been built in what was previously a wetland was that maybe they did some filling. And I could be totally wrong about that because I have not researched it, but I can't tell you the number of places I've worked at where people have come in and filled wetlands. And it used to happen all the time before we had regulations saying not to do it. So whatever that's worth.
Bev, did you have a follow-up question? And then I know Ricky's got her hand up. Yep.
Let Ricky go first and then I'll go.
Okay. Ricky?
The floodplain zoning bylaw went in the, I would say mid-70s, when the League of Women Voters, we worked on that very hard, and we got it through town meeting probably the end of the 70s. So if that house was built before then, it's quite possible that the existing rules allowed it. But the question that I have, and this displays my ignorance and my real my mind's been elsewhere. When the signs of the people who say save our dam, are they saying save the spillway? Is that what they really mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that's really a matter of real education for people in the community, because that's misleading. I mean, you're talking about the dam, which is where the trees are, right?
Yeah.
It would. Oh, actually,
It's really both. They're structure. They're that and even the wall help make the dam. They're all part of the same structure, but if the spillway was to be removed, the earthen berm would no longer function as a dam, and the water would be able to travel naturally as it would without being impounded. There would be no more pond behind it.
but then on the other hand, even though it wouldn't be a dam, therefore the trees could remain, so it would stay the way it is. So in essence, it's kind of weird because you're changing the spillway, but you're keeping the dam part as it is, as opposed to removing the spillway and as opposed to keeping the spillway and removing the trees that are on the dam. So,
Right. It's a term of art in a way. When we talk to Stantec, because we've been saying spillway removal, and that's not like usually the typical lingo that people use when they're talking about river restoration. They talk about dam removal, but we've been trying to like get that point out to your point, Ricky, because it's the earthen berm and the spillway, and then there's other pieces of the structure. But you're right, it's the spillway, it's the waterfall that they are advocating for the most.
And there is a way to save the spillway if you remove the trees.
Yes, you would remove all of the trees and you would reinforce that side. That would be saving the spillway. And that would mean leaving the impoundment and all of that.
Now, forgive me for simplifying this beyond probably logic, but I mean, I have not been involved in all the intricate parts of this decision. And I think most people will probably look at it the way I have, which is, you know, an either or question. If you retain the spillway, you must remove the trees, correct?
Yes.
Okay. If, okay, so those people, do they understand that if they retain the spillway, they must remove the trees? Or are they demanding that both remain the way they are?
So at one point they were wanting both to remain the same. I think they understand that the trees have to be removed. So
They're hoping for less trees to be removed. They're hoping that have maybe half of those trees will be deemed to not be part of the dam and be allowed to stay. But as Jillian said, we don't know.
Okay.
don't know, and I think that saying half is like very unrealistic personally.
Yeah, maybe a third. But
Even less, I would say. I
Yes.
mean, the Office of Dam Safety is incredibly conservative because their job is to make sure dams are safe, right? So they've told us multiple times now, all trees on the dam have to go, and it's a question of the extent of the dam, of the earthen berm. I would be really surprised if they let any of those trees stay, but.
Okay. I'm looking at this from the standpoint of getting it past whatever we're talking about here in terms of remediation. If the sentiment is really strong to maintain the spillway, that would mean removing the trees. And there would be some additional construction of modern day fish ladders.
Potentially, but what we learned is that if there was a new fish ladder, it might be like in addition to the current fish ladder. So it would change the look of the spillway anyway. There would be like one on top, one beside it. And then we learned that fish ladders, a very small percentage of fish, even in modern fish ladders, get through it. And it would also not address the issues that are in the river because of the dam. So if you have a fish ladder, fish maybe could get through it. It's a small percentage of fish based on the data. And once those fish get through it, they're then in an environment that is not, yeah, it has lower levels of dissolved oxygen. It has algae blooms, and it has higher temperatures. So that's why it says like hot dam in that slide with the fish. So it is really easy to simplify it to this trees or pond or trees or waterfall situation. But the reality is it's like healthy river versus waterfall is how I interpret it based on what we've heard.
Yeah, I like that depiction. Yeah, it's like ecological issues versus how it looks.
Yeah.
Aesthetics.
Yeah, aesthetics, right.
I think another
It's
issue
also
that,
monetary. I mean, it's also monetary, right? I mean,
yeah, that's something I was going to comment on, of this issue of, it's not just a case of, you know, if we decide to keep the dam, it's not just a case of we fix it and then we're done. You know, it costs more to fix it than to remove it, but then there are all these ongoing costs. There's inspection costs and ongoing maintenance and so forth. And one thing that I don't know if the cost estimates considered or not is generally regulations don't get simpler and more and easier to comply with over time. So, you know, not that you can peg a number to it, but 30 years from now, the requirements might be more stringent than they are today and therefore cost more. So I don't envision the ongoing operation and maintenance becoming less over the years.
Well, one thing we actually learned is that if we were to fix the fish ladder, or add a new fish ladder, which we may be required to do, we would not only have to do that, we would have to have someone monitor it during every fish run season and make sure it's working. And if it's not working, fix it.
Mhm.
And I imagine that wouldn't be cheap. We have some of that estimated in our operating costs.
Yep.
Personally, that information we don't have as like built out as we do for the rest of the research that we've done.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I don't think you can necessarily assign a hard cost to this stuff beyond the idea that environmental compliance doesn't get simpler over time. As you know, if it's going to change, it's probably going to include, maybe 25 years from now, they discover some other thing that we don't even know about now. And it's like, hey, you also have to look at this condition, and that's going to become part of your ongoing study monitoring requirements. So, I don't see that, having spent my whole career dealing with environmental regulations, I don't see them saying, hey, you know what, all this stuff about making sure the dam is in good shape and making sure the fish can get up the river, and you know what, we don't think you need to do that anymore. That's not going to happen. It's going to go the other direction.
I just want to circle back to Bev. I know you had a follow-up question, right?
It's not a question, just
Oh.
more of just presenting other information that I think was considered by the folks who were part of Save Our Dam, that does include at least one committee member. I'm not sure if there's more than one. Martin, do you know?
Sorry, what was that?
The Save Our Dam committee includes, I believe, at least one committee member.
I don't know.
I don't know. Okay. Anyway, but some of what came out at the last meeting was the navigability of the dam, of the river, with the dam removed. And there was some concern that there'll be portions that will not be navigable, at least at some times of year, and will require porting around. They'll be too shallow and rocky. And I think that was also part of the consideration, although I think the main consideration is just the landmark and the beauty of it. But I don't know I haven't looked at their site. I don't know what their
Been confused by that navigation argument, because it's not navigable now over the spillway, right?
This is in other parts, I think, further up the river, was it?
It's really only in the area that is between the pedestrian bridge and the spillway, where I shared that like slide in the beginning where we talked about that. And Cindy, I think you asked the question about the lines. And yeah, that's where this most significant change would happen. My understanding is upstream of the pedestrian bridge, it would be pretty insensible to someone on a kayak or a canoe that they would be able to paddle without any major change. But in that area where there is that elevation change, the river depth would also be changing. And in some cases it could be, I think we talked in the committee meeting, like 6 inches to a foot of water. And that is, varies by season. But that is, like I've mentioned, that's a concern.
Cindy and Brinley, you both have your hands up, and we are starting to run a little bit tight on time, but go ahead.
I guess I have two questions and a comment. The one question is, are there any abutters, particularly upstream abutters, that in that zones between the footbridge and the dam spillway, who are in favor of removal?
Not everyone has a sign, so I don't know, right? I think it's a little hard. I really feel a lot of empathy for Martin and other people in our committee who live right in this area, because I think it's hard to potentially have a different opinion, because it does feel so like you're destroying something I care about kind of feeling. And yeah, I don't know. I know one of the committee members lives right upstream, and he has shared that he's really conflicted. So I don't think he's part of that Save the Dam group, but I'm not sure which way he would vote, because he sees the pros and cons of both sides, I think, like Martin.
In terms of the upstream abutters meeting, I was not at that, but was there any indication? Actually, at those meetings, I think a lot of people were just giving their thoughts and getting information, and they didn't take a position. But I'm wondering if anything emerged at the upstream abutters meeting that would answer that question.
Yeah, I was at that upstream abutter meeting, and there were a few people who said they supported dam removal. That was, it feels like ages ago. It was in November that we had those meetings. But my perspective is that the most vocal people are the people who, for supporting repair, are the upstream abutters whose views and experience on the river would change the most, because the impoundment would change. And those people actually, interestingly enough, can't see the spillway from their homes, but it's their relation with the river that would change.
Right.
So the second question is, if I were an upstream abutter and I was used to having the river come up right up, and I could put my canoe right into the water and float away, and then the spillway and the spillway goes away, and now I have to go out further, and now it's kind of wet, and I want to put some sort of a structure so I can get out there with my canoe. Am I going to be running into permitting issues to put kind of maybe a wooden boardwalk or something out there so I can get my canoe into the water?
Yeah,
Do you know about
it wouldn't be any different than where you are right now. So the regulations for the edge of like how you interact with the river right now as a property owner would not be different. It would be where the river is.
Okay.
That would be different potentially. We don't know the exact channel that the river would carve.
Yeah.
But we have that answered. Claire Rundelli, our conservation agent, she's answered this in we have an abutter FAQ.
Okay. And then my comment is, I don't know if there's any kind of a kiosk at the dam or the spillway, but I would suggest that you guys put one up and explain to anybody who's walking by what's going on. That this is an issue under consideration, and pick up a few slides, or get some graphic designer to just put something there with information about how to contact, how to look at, for more information about what you've been finding out. Just a suggestion.
That's a good suggestion.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
Last year we had this banner there, and we were going to hang it up again, and I'm looking around because I was looking to see if I could see it. We can't find it. And we were going to put it up again, but we've been doing so much public input around it that we hadn't prioritized that, and also there's a lot required to prepare for these meetings. But no, I think Brinley's point, and I think Cindy, you emphasize this, is like the committee really does need to figure out how we would communicate the decision and like build trust in that decision. I think that will be really important. Or the recommendation.
So we have Brinley and Bill, and then maybe we should try
Yeah,
to draw it to a
I'll do a
close.
closing comment or just say something to add at the end.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. So Brinley, and then Bill, and then Martin.
My question is really quick. Were the abutter meetings recorded as well? Can we?
No, we didn't record those because we
they-
wanted people to be able to speak freely without.
There are summaries posted online, aren't there?
Yeah, we have notes there. The notes of the meetings are posted on the project website.
Oh, that's great. That's what I was.
Is that link been shared in the chat?
I'll share it right now, and I'll also share where you can send your comments if you wanted to share with the committee what you think.
Yeah, I would suggest doing it at least 2 days before the next meeting, because Maggie who's kind of the staff person, has to get them organized and send out to all the committee members before the meeting. So the next, I forgot, when is the next meeting? The 19th?
Yes, and at that meeting, we are going to have public speak again. It will be in the beginning of the meeting is the plan. We're going to be posting that agenda, I think, tomorrow. And I think that might be the last time we do public speak live in a meeting. And then at the final meeting, we'll still accept written comments ahead of time.
But the written comments do go out to all committee members, usually the day of the meeting. I would suggest getting them to the staff at least the day before.
So I only had one last quick question was, in terms of time frame, is there, excuse me, is there a difference in time frame between repair or restore in the process moving forward after the recommendation is made? What is the time frame are we looking at for either repair or restore? Are we 2 years? Are we 5 years?
Yeah. So for both, it seems like it's about at least 2 years away from it was like for the timing for repair had less permitting required and less design work because that design had already been developed, the full design. But it would be about 3 years till it was done kind of thing, because there's phases of work for that too. It would be a 2-phase project. And then for removal or river restoration, that we probably wouldn't see anything happening in the river for at least a couple of years and maybe even longer. There's in our last presentation on June 27th, we shared potential timelines with permitting and design and construction. And I have a sense that removal would even take longer than what we've shown.
Meaning we wouldn't see any change for at least 2 years.
Yeah, either way.
Because of all the processing. Either. Okay, got you. Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, really.
Yeah. Bill?
I have a comment and a concern. My comment is for the upstream abutters. I would think 99% of them would have more property after the dam is removed and rivers restored than they would before, since the level would decrease. So I would think that's a plus. I understand the issues around aesthetics and possibly access, but I would think their property lines would increase. So
it would
just a
mostly
comment.
Yeah, it would be mostly wetlands, although maybe some things that were wet would then be dry, but.
Well, that's what I would think. Yeah, the part closest to their property or what's now the line would be drier and usable. But anyway, that's just a comment. I have a concern, and that is it's sort of alluded to in this meeting. If there is a disinformation campaign and a desire to torpedo this restoration, is there going to be, as the town considered, how we would respond to that? I know, as you said, there's tons of information. It's totally transparent. But do we have a plan if there is a out and out disinformation, false data being distributed to everyone in town? Is there any way to counter that?
Well, I would say that's happening right now. I mean, people told me that they talked to the folks at the farmers market about saving the dam, and they told them that repairing the dam would be better for the wildlife on the river. That is not what we heard in our committee meeting. So that was disappointing to me. I do not think that it's the role of the committee at this stage. We haven't made a recommendation to do a campaign like that. I don't think it would be appropriate. I don't think it would be appropriate for town staff to do that right now. I think once the recommendation is made and the select board have chosen which path they would like to go, then I could see the town doing more campaigning, if you will. I don't feel like that's really the right word to use. But residents are doing for the Save the Dam thing, that would be appropriate for someone else to do.
Yeah, that strikes me that it would have to be a residents-led effort because that's where the passion is going to come on both sides. Martin, I know you wanted to have some closing comments. I'm just going to jump in real quickly to just thank both of you, not only for today's presentation, but as others have said, for the phenomenal amount of work that this committee has done. So please extend our thanks to the rest of the committee as well. Just a fantastic job. When we talk about like whether we'll have a committee or a citizens group to actively combat disinformation, there's a part of me that almost thinks, let's use this as an opportunity to model how to fight back against disinformation. And then that will grow into a way, because gosh, there are other places in our world where we see disinformation, aren't there? But I'll get off the soapbox and hand it back to you, Martin, for closing comments.
Yeah, no, I think I'm not surprised that there's a kind of a group that's concerned about loss of the scenic beauty of the current spillway. I'm actually surprised that it took this long. But what's come out, I always wish it was earlier, because what has come out in the committee deliberations is the scenic beauty of the spillway is going to be replaced by something else that may be equally scenic, which is some sort of natural flowing river, probably with rapids, probably maybe cascades, maybe certainly riffles. We've talked about trying to get some sound that will be kind of a pleasing sound, just like we have now. So I'm pretty confident, and I've also gone hiking a lot and seen rivers, natural rivers, and they all kind of flow over rocks and they make some nice noise and they're beautiful. So I think that what the scenic beauty will probably be replaced by equally scenic beauty, and I kind of wish other people were more understanding of that. Unfortunately, we never really got a good rendering of what, because nobody really knows what it's going to look like. We've got aerial views. We don't, but if you look down on that, you're going to see riffles. You may see rocks, cascades. Unfortunately, what's good for the scenic beauty is not good for the canoeing. So I really probably feel obligated to emphasize a bit more that the boating is not going to be improved, which was what we were initially told. I think it's going to be problematic. So we have this area from the footbridge, from the Sergeant Bridge down to Pleasant Street, and then the next 100 yards beyond Pleasant Street, which have always been too shallow to canoe in. That area is all going to be shallow, maybe a half foot to a foot, which is really marginal for going downstream in a kayak, and probably too shallow for a canoe. And it also is going to probably be kind of a whitewater situation. I don't know, class 1, class 2, probably not too bad, probably manageable during some of the year. And then during the rest of the year, probably even most of the summer, it's going to be probably just too shallow to even go on a whitewater type environment. And then going upstream with a half foot to a foot, I think is pretty much impossible, particularly if you're going you're basically having to go up in water elevation. So the water is coming down somehow, and it's pretty hard to kind of paddle up when it's that steep. So I think that it would be difficult, if not impossible, to do that. Also, from the Santec people, we got an estimate of 2 to 3 feet per second, which is the upper limit of the ability to paddle. So I think I'm more concerned now than before, although I was concerned initially about I'm pretty confident we are going to lose the ability that we have now to go to the dam, put in your canoe, go upstream, basically on a flat lake, and then come back again. So you may be able to go to Medfield or to Dover or wherever and go just downstream and get to the dam, but I don't think you'll be able to go both directions. So how important is that? I think we really haven't grappled with it yet, because we just really got the information at the last meeting, but I sort of feel that I should bring that up because that's an issue in my mind at this point.
Yeah,
I
would have one other remark too that has just weighed really heavily on me since we heard from our native representatives on the committee, which is that I shared it, but there weren't a lot of questions about it. But they shared the petitions from their ancestors against dams, and then they've asked us to remove this dam and to honor the river. It was a quote from them. And throughout this, there's been a lot of talk about whatever happens, we should have signs either way talking about Indigenous history. And I just can't imagine putting a sign up if we repair it, that doesn't say, you know, our Indigenous representatives asked us to remove this and we chose to ignore them again. Like that just is, it just hurts my soul. And that's just me telling you as a friend, like how I feel about it. That I think would be very, personally, that would be very hard for me to support. So
Yeah.
if we were choose to repair it, you will see me advocate for a sign that acknowledges the recent decisions that the town would make.
Yeah. That's a really important point, Jillian. So, well, thank you again, both, and complex issue, and more to come, I guess. With good luck with your as you move into the deliberations and the recommendation phase.